Okay, let's talk briefly about tripods and why you may want one. Tripods are little three-legged um, structures. I'll post an example when I'm putting this up because I don't have one right now to show you. But basically, it's something that your camera can rest on, so the camera can stay steady. Let's talk about why this matters. There's a couple of cases. As we talked about a couple weeks ago, depending on what your surroundings are, you might not get to choose how much light comes into a certain scene that you want to photograph. So for example, if you're on Yosemite even, and it's an incredibly overcast day, you might not get as much light as you wanted. Or if you're inside a church, especially one of those old Gothic churches, there's very little light, and you can't really create a situation where you pour more light into there. One of the things you might want to do is that, one of the tricks you can do is that if there's low light, you can actually lower your shutter speed so your shutter stays open for a little bit longer than it would have otherwise. And this allows more light to come in because for every millisecond that the shutter is open, light's coming into the camera, which is what you want for the photo to be well exposed. So if you want your shutter speed open, it's very, very, very important that during that time you don't shake your camera at all, because even a tiniest shake on the camera will blur your image. And if you're taking photos of inside of a church, the glass, let's say you're taking pictures of the mosaic glass, well, the mosaic glass isn't moving, so you don't have to worry about your subject moving, which means you can actually keep the shutter open for a certain amount of time without worrying about the subject blurring the photo. However, you have to worry about your hands, because as much as you might try and as hard as you could be to keep yourself stiff and make sure that you're not shaking the camera, you will shake the camera. If nothing else, when you're pressing the button, it'll shake the camera almost always. And even if you don't shake it right then, as you're holding it while the camera is taking its time to actually get enough light in, almost always you'll shake the camera. So tripods are built basically to avoid that. You put your camera on this thing, and then you press the button. There's actually an extendable cord thing you can actually buy, which attaches to your camera, and it allows you to press the button instead of on that little thing instead of on the camera itself, which means you're not touching the camera body at all, and chances of you shaking that are very low if you're not touching it at all. So what happens is you click this button, the camera turns on, lifts up the little flap in front of the chip that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and then it takes as much time as it needs to get enough light in to take the photo. And then when it's done, it puts the flap back down, and you actually get your photo. So the nice thing about having it on the tripod is nobody is touching the camera. There's no chance the camera is going to shake. That simple. People who are, I would say, relatively professional photographers use tripods almost all the time because it gives you the most versatility. It allows you to take as much time as you need to get your photo taken. It also means that wherever you set your tripod and you put your camera on it, it's not going to move, right? So sometimes you set your shot up really well, and then without realizing, as you're hitting it, you actually move a little bit to the right, and now you're taking a totally different scene than you originally meant to. And if you're a professional photographer, I promise you, moving from here to here is a huge difference to you. Even moving from here to here is something you might be very upset about because you've spent all this time trying to get the exact right shot. So a tripod allows you to refrain from basically shaking your camera and to allow you to frame a particular shot and make sure that that's exactly the shot you're taking. A lot of times if you're in a place where there's really, it's crowded with trees, it's another case where there isn't enough light and you really want that shot, you're going to need something like a tripod. And tripods come in lots of different sizes and shapes. They're always tripods, which means it has 3 legs. But there's tiny little ones you can attach and you can clip on top of a tree, and you can put your camera right there, so that if you want a small one that you can always carry with you, they make them. The problem with the tiny little ones is generally they require smaller cameras. They won't carry a very heavy camera like mine is. And then there's really, really heavy ones, which will be very safe and secure, and you can put something like this humongous lens in front of your camera, and the tripod will still be able to carry the whole weight. And then there's ones in between, which are fold-up little tripods you can take with you if you go hiking all the time, and it will still allow you to take a relatively good shot and will carry your camera. Maybe not your camera with this lens, but it'll still be able to carry your camera and get you a relatively good shot. So that's the story with tripods. I recommend you do invest in one. I use my tripod all the time when I take night photography, for example, because it's a case where you really want to avoid shake. I have used my tripod on many other occasions, and when I take client shots sometimes, especially if I know the light's going to be tricky. It's a little bit cumbersome to use, but I think it's worth the experience and the practice. So I would recommend that you try it. You can get tripods for as cheap as $10–20. They're not very expensive, and I think it's a worthwhile investment. that's it. And if you don't want to invest in it, go ahead and try it out from a friend. You might even be able to rent them out from a photography shop. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a message.